Assalamu alaikum and Ramadan Mubarak, peace and blessings. So I want to begin with this question today. Why are we still using God's name at weddings, funerals, when taking office, in court as a means to gain trust that we will fulfill our obligations when we do not reference the scripture or his words at any time during the entire process? So the legal system allows for this, but we are not allowed to bring up God's name or his scripture to make certain that we are fulfilling the oath that we swore in his name, right? So legally, if you were to do that, you might end up with some problems, but you can mention God's name. You can swear under oath. So is it weird or is it just me? But that's like swearing that you'll abide by the law, but never look to see what the law actually says when an issue arises. So while we do this strange practice, we want to hold other people accountable to doing what they're supposed to be doing, while we're not even checking to make sure we are doing what we were sworn in to do in front of people. So when we make an oath using God's name, we are swearing to uphold his words. That is what we are doing. So I'm just asking, why are we still doing this if we have no intention on checking his words? In marriage, this is just an example. In marriage, we say we'll be obedient to one another. And I know some people hate that word, have taken that word out, but it's still in a lot of the marriage oaths. We even still include till death do us part in some cases. But after making an oath under God, when do we check and say what in the marriage vows during the marriage? How do we reference God? When do we stop and reference what God actually said, since we swore in his name, right? Another example, when we take office and swear under God, at what point does anyone say, wait a minute, hold on 1 second. What does this mean? How can we determine that you will that this is going to make you accountable? This swearing under God when you're taking a political office or taking office. When we have a funeral, it's all about God, God's name. We're using God's name constantly. But at what point do we be honest? And why do we make every person sound like a saint at death, right? Is that okay? Is it okay to take God's name and make these references to a person who may not have been a good person, but to paint them in that light at their funeral? I'm just asking the question. But who taught us to do that? Somebody had to come from somewhere. But personally, one of the worst circumstances under this particular idea of swearing under God's name is to receive a reward for twerking and contributing to all of these devastating ideas that people are putting into the society that tear down family and community life. And just to say, most of all, I want to thank God when you know you're wrong. That's awful. So we do this because we've gotten so used to using God's name in vain that we've detached him from his words and his laws to make it convenient and easy for us to avoid accountability. That's why we've done it. So we want to pose as angels as if we're obedient without the need for explanation. So now don't get upset when the authorities decide they're going to remove God's name from ceremonies and gatherings. They've already started it with schools and other things. But another way to look at it is perhaps they've decided to become honest about where they stand. Just something to think about. Thank you for listening. Assalamu alaikum. Ramadan Mubarak. Peace and blessings.